A presence lingers among those you once called your closest companions, an absence more palpable than any form of presence, a quiet vanishing of the one who once seemed to embody vitality itself. They have not succumbed to sadness in any conventional sense, nor have they shed their social inclinations, like a serpent discarding its skin. They have simply dissolved into the periphery, slipping away from gatherings where their laughter once reverberated like a promise that everything was going to be all right. And what unsettles the heart is that these disappearances do not belong to the timid or the hesitant. They are enacted by those whose intellect blazes too bright for ordinary rooms, the ones whose insight was once celebrated until it became too piercing to endure. It is the physicians who lay down their instruments, the executives who abandon titles gilded in hollow prestige, the artists who no longer pin their souls to gallery walls, the educators who surrender the chalk in silent protest. This erosion of brilliance happens in plain sight, yet goes unspoken. What fractures of perception compel these incandescent minds to relinquish their place at the banquet table of collective ambition? What do they see lurking beneath the golden veneer that the rest of us are too comforted or too afraid to acknowledge? It begins with a subtle dissonance, a flickering sense that beneath all the smiling faces and polite agreements, something vital has been misplaced. You find yourself seated among colleagues nodding along to declarations so bereft of truth, they ring with a metallic hollowness. You watch as friends barter pieces of their spirit in exchange for fleeting validation, as if victory itself has been distilled into a spectacle of acquisition and pretense. In those moments of lucidity, when the theater curtains slip apart, the realization dawns that your own sanity is intact, while the collective consciousness has quietly fractured. From that revelation, there is no unseeing. The fissures in the foundation of things begin to multiply, spreading like a contagion across the edifice of what you once believed was real. They look around and perceive that conversation has lost its marrow. What passes for connection has become a transaction of half-formed phrases and practiced affirmations. There is a choreography to it, an unconscious mimicry where everyone enacts the same tired steps, though no one remembers why the dance began or what it was meant to celebrate. To the sensitive and curious mind, this performative script becomes a daily starvation. It is not a distaste born of arrogance. It is a hunger unmet, the agony of a spirit that yearns for discourse as rich and sustaining as a banquet, and instead must subsist on the flavorless gruel of shallow pleasantries. Imagine a master painter forbidden to see color, a musician ordered to play only a single note. Such is the suffocating plight of the deep thinker in a world infatuated with surfaces. In time, they do not retreat from humanity itself, but from the pantomime that masquerades as communion. Their absence is not a rejection of people, but a refusal to perpetuate rituals that do nothing but erode the soul. There is also a profound suspicion of the herd, an instinctive recoil from the safety that consensus pretends to offer. The intelligent eye sees that conformity is a narcotic more addictive than any substance, that people are willing to forsake curiosity, abandon originality, and sacrifice their own discernment in exchange for the narcotic comfort of belonging. An unguarded thought voiced at the wrong table becomes a spark that threatens the dry straw of collective certainty. Watch the faces in such a moment. They do not lean forward to explore the idea. They lean back to extinguish it. What is demanded is not curiosity, but compliance. Not dialogue, but allegiance. The chorus of approval is an invisible cage, and to remain within its walls, one must first betray the mind's innate restlessness. But for those unwilling to barter integrity for inclusion, the options narrow to a single imperative: walk away and build a haven where independent thought can breathe unshackled. Thus are the outposts of quiet brilliance established far from the roaring throng. They have seen too clearly the machinery of desire, the vast and intricate apparatus designed to cultivate dissatisfaction. I consume, therefore I exist. This credo is etched into the cultural marrow, whispering that identity is measured by the logos stitched into fabric, by the unboxing of the next novelty that promises a fleeting sense of sufficiency. And it is this machinery, this insidious choreography of lack, that the perceptive mind regards with equal parts horror and sorrow. To see through it is to watch your fellow humans enslaved by illusions they do not recognize as illusions. The intelligent person glimpses the recursive loop, engineer a deficit, peddle the remedy, bask in the momentary gratitude, and then seed the next hunger. It is a carnival of longing, a pageant of self-erasure disguised as fulfillment. To keep such a system humming requires endless complicity, and to participate in it fully is to sign away the claim to one's own authenticity. So they slip quietly out of this dance as well, content to be labeled failures by a society that prizes accumulation over purpose, distraction over reflection, glitter over substance. They are no less wary of the siren call of digital communion, that promise of infinite connection, whose currency proves counterfeit. It is not connection that flourishes in the glowing blue glow of devices, but contact, a pale echo of intimacy in which every nuance is flattened into metrics. In this realm, ideas are sheared of complexity to fit the constraints of screens, and authenticity becomes another performance scored by algorithms. They watch in quiet sorrow as thoughtful discourse is abandoned for viral spectacle, as the architecture of social media rewards outrage over understanding, declarations over questions, monologues over dialogue. And so, they depart these spaces, not in disdain for technology itself, but in defense of something more sacred, the possibility of meeting another human spirit unmediated, unedited, uncommodified. The contemplative soul cannot thrive in perpetual motion. Reflection is not an indulgence, but an imperative, the very crucible in which meaning is forged. Yet the age has been engineered to suffocate silence, to deny solitude, to disallow even a moment unfilled by stimulus. The intelligent person senses how this ceaseless occupation of attention serves to blunt awareness, to numb inquiry, to stunt any flicker of transcendence. They defend their hours of solitude not because they disdain company, but because they understand that action without contemplation is the slow suffocation of the soul. Society mistakes this need for space as retreat, this hunger for stillness as sloth. But they know otherwise. They know that to think deeply is to live fully, and to live without thought is to die by degrees. They are wounded, too, by the spectacle of moral inversion that unfolds wherever human institutions gather power. They see decency discarded as weakness, opportunism praised as ingenuity, exploitation garlanded in the language of progress. They watch liars ascend to podiums while those who tell inconvenient truths are silenced or ridiculed. They see tenderness treated as a liability, cynicism celebrated as sophistication. And in this spectacle of inversion, they perceive the greatest tragedy, that to succeed in many arenas is to betray the compass that points toward the good. For some, this is a compromise too costly to contemplate, so they refuse the accolades, the promotions, the garlands woven of duplicity. They choose obscurity over corruption, integrity over acclaim. Their exit costs them comfort, but preserves the only wealth worth keeping. They have grown weary, too, of the constant reduction of their inner life to something palatable for mass consumption. From the earliest days, they have felt compelled to smooth the edges of their curiosity, to package their insights in words small enough for the common tongue, to pretend that they are not seeing what they are seeing. It is an unrelenting labor to pretend to be simpler than you are, to trim away the wild branches of thought until only the acceptable, the familiar, the digestible remains. But this is a violence against the self that cannot be endured indefinitely. Eventually, the burden of translation outweighs the benefits of participation. And so, they turn away, not in arrogance, but in an act of self-rescue, preserving the sanctity of their intellect from the dulling acids of perpetual compromise. Yet when these voices grow silent, when they step into the shadows, something precious goes missing from the collective enterprise of civilization. For it is they who have always held the mirror up to power, who have insisted that systems be accountable to the human spirit, who have reminded us that the world need not remain as it is simply because it has always been so. Their absence leaves us with fewer questions and more slogans, fewer awakenings and more anesthetics. They are the sentinels of possibility, the scouts of a better future, and when they vanish, the terrain ahead becomes harder to navigate. They did not slip away because they believed themselves superior, but because they cherished a vision of the world that was nobler, braver, more awake than the one unfolding around them. They longed for a culture that could tolerate ambiguity without recoiling, that could welcome complexity without defensiveness, that could cradle the wounded and celebrate the wise in the same breath. But what they found instead was a marketplace of validation where only the easiest truths could be sold, a theater of belonging where only the most predictable performances earned applause.